to stay in the consciousness of unity facing this. And that's what we've been looking at up to now. And in the conversation, God, in the form of Krishna in the stories, is explaining to the prince, well, it's the way of love. That's the answer. That's how you stay in it. And it's the still mind that you have to access to follow that path. And he gives instructions to the prince when the prince says, how do you do it? He says, you've got to try and you've got to keep on trying until you attain success in this endeavor. But he doesn't leave it there. He says, look, if you can't do this, if you lack the will or I guess the discipline to do this, don't fret because there is another way. See, that's what I mean by there's no one size fits all. He gives another way. You know, I was remembering as I was reading through this when I first started studying meditation in the early Science of Mind classes. And to me, it seemed that in the early classes, there was only one size of meditation. To me, it seemed that all the students were asked to do this kind of closed-eyed, flowery, guided meditation where you close your eyes and you imagine yourself in a scene in nature with a path going through the woods and water trickling and doors behind which there were messages. And well, it was all good and well, except that the moment I closed my eyes, I saw nothing. Just a kind of noisy black screen, like a television set that wasn't properly tuned in to the station. And it was only later that I discovered there were other people just like me. That some people, when they closed their eyes, they could enter into a rich, beautiful, visual world, and others don't. Now, of course, it seems obvious to me that people learn and understand and experience in different modes, but then I didn't know, and as a result, I abandoned all form of meditation. Now I understand a little more that some people, when they hear those meditations, they listen to the words and they follow it like a story because they're more word-oriented. Some people feel what's going on without really having a sense of what the story is at all because they're more feeling-oriented and so on and so on and so on. And it just reminded me again that each one of us has our own way of meditating and of responding to the world. And each of us gets to discover the way that best suits us. I mean, for example, in meditation, when we're planning on carving out time to sit in the quiet mind because we want to follow the instruction, well, some of us find it alone in nature. Some of us find it walking. Some of us find it in complete, motionless stillness. Others of us find it in a darkened room with soft pillows and music and incense and so on and so on. But some people, like me, sometimes they don't look for it because maybe they were discouraged like I was, that they didn't have the discipline to stay with it or the endurance to stay through it. And so I refer to Krishna again, who says, don't fret. There are other paths. For example, you can attain this awareness of oneness and of your sacred nature by doing this. By engaging yourself in selfless service to humanity. Because that will lead you surely to a still mind and an experience of oneness. Now, at the Center for Spiritual Living right here, we frequently talk to this diversity of paths and saying, well, there are at least 5 different practices for you to consider for a spiritual life. I mean, there is meditation, there is prayer, there is selfless service, there is study, and there's circulation. And each one of them is wonderful. And naturally, you're going to probably find that you excel in one area over the other. And what I'm finding is I can't really sink into that one area where I excel and where I'm already very good. And personally, I benefit from a more comprehensive set of practices that work together to support my journey through this world as I try to make sense out of it. And it says, if one practice feeds the other. Like the author of the book says, he talks about how, sometimes he's sitting in deep meditation and he would be called to get up and go into service to help somebody. And although that might be frustrating to some people, he discovered the next day it created a deepness in his awareness in meditation. I understand that a little bit because I see how one of my practices feeds another one of my practices. For example, by practicing giving, I increase my awareness of gracious receiving. And when gracious receiving is strong in me, then the gratitude component in my prayer is enhanced. And when my prayer is filled up with gratitude, then I have a sense about me when I'm in service. And when I'm in service with a grateful heart, then when I stand in the face of incomprehensible things, there's a stillness that I can access. And so on. And then the net result is that spirituality then becomes a life instead of a practice, a style of living that can carry us in whatever the circumstances of our life are. An extract from the book, the author says, gradually I began to understand that serving the Lord of love in everyone around me was not restricted to reading to the sick or feeding the poor. It meant, in the simple words of my grandmother, putting other people first. Once my eyes were open to this, I didn't need a special occasion to practice. There were opportunities in every day, on a busy day, many times, every hour. Gradually, I began to understand why this is so important for training the mind. When you are really focused on another person's needs, you forget yourself. Forget yourself completely, and you are united with the Lord of love. One of the practices of the Center for Spiritual Living has to do with this, in that we partner every year with a number of non-profit organizations who are doing excellent work in the community. And we do it for several reasons. One of the reasons that we support them and send money is so that we